Welcome to Our Thoughts Tonight.
Welcome to Our Thoughts Tonight. I'm Murat, and here is
I'm Ishak.
Ashik with me. And we have a very special guest today, Mr. Vince Sellers, an ex-FBI agent.
Correct. Yes, thank you guys for having me. Vince Sellers, live here in Austin, Texas, and yes, I'm a former FBI agent, and I'm glad it is that way. I was only in for a couple of years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more today, I'm sure. But very interesting adventure, and glad I went on the ride, and also I'm glad I'm off the ride. So, but I really appreciate you guys having me on today. Very thought-provoking podcast. So I hope you guys keep doing this and keep growing your audience, because you've got some really interesting thoughts and good content for the audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that.
I want to ask you if you can tell our audience and us about your book and your YouTube channel, which is where I found out about you and your book from.
Sure. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll talk about that for a moment. So the book kind of dates back to when I was even in the FBI. So that was just in the mid 2000 first decade there, 2005 to 2007 range. I was in, like I say, just a couple of years in San Diego. So of course I went to the FBI Academy in Virginia, and I originally was from the San Antonio area. So went to Virginia, then to San Diego, and had an exciting time out there. And I'll tell a few more stories there. But the longer I was in, I realized this is really not the career I thought it was going to be, and was kind of, I just knew I could just feel in my heart it was not going to be just what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But it was very interesting to me, the work. So I thought this would be fun to write down for friends and family. I should write a book. Not that I did anything amazing, but to me, I thought, well, the interesting part is that it's just kind of a typical, what I went through is pretty much the same experience for everybody that goes through. And there's wonderful books out there, very exciting, people tracking down terrorists and doing all kinds of amazing stuff. I really didn't do anything, but I thought, well, people might want to hear about just the normal experience. And I remembered I wanted in so bad, and I was so interested in, true crime and all those things. And I still am. I remember that desire and not having any information out there to really learn, like, well, what's it really like? And you see these official publications, and then you have these, former FBI director writes their book. Well, good experience for them. But what it's like for the little guy that just comes in, like, what's it like the day to day? So I thought, well, that'll be cool. I'll write a book, and I know my family will love it. I'm sure my mom will read it, right? So there you go. And she did, and she actually helped me. She's a former English teacher and helped me do a little editing on it, fortunately. But anyway, so that's kind of where it stemmed from the book. And I remember kind of writing the chapter outlines as I was sitting in my car on various stakeouts and stuff, just killing time, because sometimes you're in a car sitting there for 12 hours watching a door. Not real exciting, but I start writing on a napkin, literally on a napkin, chapter outlines, like, well, I could just write a kind of simple book that walks through the whole process of joining the FBI, and then what's it like being just an agent, just out there on the streets, just what's the day to day. So that's anyway, that's the book. I wound up calling it Eyes Pried Open, Rookie FBI Agent. So it really did open my eyes, and I like the word pride. Said eyes wide, pride, whatever. But
I thought that was a great title. I enjoyed the title. Actually, about almost halfway through the book, and honestly, I didn't know. I mean, I've watched almost all of your YouTube videos, and I hadn't started the book until you agreed to joining the podcast on about a month ago for this episode, and I just blew through the first half within a week, because I actually was listening to the audiobook as I was driving around, like driving to work and such. And I would take like the extra long route to get to work so I could continue listening. Because it's so entertaining. And my current one of my dreams is to also do what you did, but honestly, it sounds way more tough than especially the training process sounds like complete hell.
I was very surprised at your the way you described, I suppose, the interview and how you lead backwards into finding why they did the crime. It just, I don't know. There's so for example, your interview / interrogation kind of split there, combined with the whole, I suppose, the criminal did what he did because of these conditions and kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you're trying to still get a confession.
Right.
Is there, I don't want to say a conflict of interest, but is there, I'm just seeing a little bit of, I suppose, stress there where you're clearly calling it an interrogation, but it's taught as an interview, and you're building, or you're investigating someone as if you're trying to find where the root is. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. As goes in conversations about punishment and rehabilitation, that whole conversation is whatever. But do you think there's a little bit of, I don't want to say dishonesty, but is there a sort of cloudiness, I suppose, there, if that makes any sense?
Sure. Yeah, I think I get the gist of what you're saying, and there is, it's an interesting profession. So, and I don't know if this shows how nerdy I am going way back. So I used to play these, role-playing games, computer role-playing games, that kind of stuff. Dungeons and Dragons.
I support it. Yeah.
But you've got, you're creating your new character and your character alignment. I'm always I like to call myself the chaotic. And so you can have the, law-abiding or kind of chaotic or, or not law, and then you have kind of the good and evil scale. So I consider myself more the good, but not necessarily, this is me playing role play. It's not an FBI game, but role-playing games, I just want to do what's right and fair to me, what I consider just, which isn't necessarily the spirit, the law. I mean, if someone's, dying of thirst and they need some water, then break into the store that's closed down and get the water, right? That kind of stuff. And there is there's a level of that comes into play. Sometimes it's almost non-existent. Crime's a crime. But there are times when, as an FBI agent, I'd be talking to somebody and they would explain their series of circumstances. And, if you really get into their head and understand, the more you understand about a criminal, you start seeing that the truth is we're all human beings. And I really believe that given the same exact upbringing, the same inputs, the same opportunities, that people usually are going to go kind of down a fairly similar path, And so, in other words, what I'm getting at this is, if I was in their shoes, probably if I came from their background, maybe in their certain family situation, maybe their unemployment situation, maybe their lack of opportunities, that could have been me holding up the bank. And terrible for an FBI agent to say that, right? How dare I even think that I could do that? But you know what? If you really get in their mind, which is good to be able to get them to talk, and then you got them, right? You got the confession and everything. And if they did a crime, then you just kind of have to rationalize that they committed a crime. And our system of justice depends on, being able to arrest them and prosecute them for that crime. The punishment is sort of out of the hands of the FBI agent. So you just have to have trust, which is another topic. We'll probably some follow-up questions there in fairness of the justice system. But I'm a human being. I know the justice system isn't always fair. And sometimes someone gets away, they get away with murder, right? And then other times, on the books, there was this drug-related crime, and different areas of the United States, by the way, even at a federal level, they have varying levels that they will or will not pursue a prosecution. So in San Diego, the drug dealers and stuff, you have a lot of the border crime. And so we had a certain tolerance level that the U.S. Attorney's Office just wouldn't prosecute. I could arrest people all day long or not. And if it wasn't over certain X amounts, and I honestly don't even remember what they were, but there were thresholds, right? Well, you go to maybe Nebraska and, Omaha, Nebraska, and nothing wrong with the good people in Nebraska. Their U.S. Attorney's Office, though, may treat that as a pretty serious crime. You had a speck of, pot on the, that's serious stuff right there. And so, the justice system the same laws are on the books for everywhere, but the
Mhm.
way it's applied and prosecuted varies. So maybe I'm getting a little off track, but let me know if I didn't answer your question. But all that is in the back of your mind
Mhm.
if you really think about it. And maybe the best FBI agents are the ones that don't overthink it, but
Yeah.
those thoughts were always in my brain. If I arrested somebody, there were plenty of times, I felt sorry for somebody. I would,
Mhm.
after getting into their head, and I know, like, God, this guy's going to go to federal prison for, a decade. I mean, are they going to be in better shape when they get out? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with the justice system. And
Mhm.
sure, justice needs to be performed. I'm not trying to, say throw it all out here or anything,
Mhm.
but there are questions and there are inconsistencies. And when you're interviewing somebody like that and you get in their head and you realize, yeah, there in some cases, not always, maybe more often or less often than not, whatever the right phrase is, you
Mhm.
realize, oh, I could have been this person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary. And
Mhm.
also, maybe that's not the best thing for an FBI agent. So some of those thoughts and your question just kind of drove
Mhm.
me down that path. Aside from the process changes and things like that,
Mhm.
also just made me realize maybe this isn't the best career for me.
Yeah.
If I'm getting in people's heads and seeing like, oh yeah, they came from these circumstances, my brain goes to, how can, as a society, not that we can make it perfect overnight, this is a 100-year plus challenge, how over time can we make things better, ensure, equal education for everybody? I mean,
Mhm.
education, again, cliched here, but education is so important. And many of these criminals, they dropped out or they had terrible education, just or a lack of. I mean, and so you start seeing these trends like, wow, maybe we could not need all these, 10,000 FBI agents and police. Maybe we
Mhm.
don't need this many if we could fix these problems in society. Now, sorry, last point here. I'll let you keep talking here.
It's all good.
Just taking over the podcast at this point, I realize, but that's where, you get into some of the defund the police
Yeah.
questions. Now, my knee-jerk reaction, I'm opening this can of worms,
Mhm.
my knee-jerk reaction to that, first time I'm hearing that is, well, that's ridiculous. Like, no, the police are the good guys.
Mhm.
I'm former, I've worked with police all the time at a San Diego police radio. Police in general, great people, and FBI agents, great people. So,
Mhm.
of course, the first thing I hear kind of is like, oh, wait a minute, I don't think that's a good idea. But if you listen to the dialogue, and I don't know the right number, I'm not saying it should be a percentage or what have you, but if you actually listen to the dialogue, and everybody claims they listen to all sides, right? But
Mhm.
I really try to. And the more I listened and thought about it, and this is even, within the last probably 6 months, a little bit of a changing of my opinion is,
Mhm.
well, maybe if you did, and this comes back to that quality conversation,
Mhm.
if you direct, if you do direct more funds to community programs, education, and
Mhm.
some of the root causes and some of these early onset things that result in crime maybe 15 years later, if you start investing more in that, then in theory you should need less less funding for police. And so
Mhm.
again, I feel terrible coming on the podcast that any police officer or FBI agent is like, good job, Vince, telling us that we don't need as much money. No, they're vastly underfunded police departments. It varies widely.
Mhm.
But I will say that it's a fair dialogue and conversation to have that,
Mhm.
we don't have an unlimited budget for everything in the world. How
Mhm.
much do we want to spend on enforcement? And are there things that we could stop, enforcing that really don't make that much difference and divert some of that funding to the things that really are important, education and community programs, to try to prevent the crime downstream later on? It's like fixing the problem up front. Fix the machine. Don't just keep making more bad parts. Fix the machine up front. So anyway,
Mhm.
so a little tangent there. Did that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it
I
did. Yeah.
completely agree with the antecedent needing to maybe be addressed,
Yeah.
if not completely, maybe more actively. Before we continue, I wanted to ask how much, what are we doing on time? I forgot to ask you before.
Oh no, it so happens. I knew I could only guarantee an hour, but
Mhm.
I'm good to go. So
Okay.
probably an hour and a
Okay.
half. I probably should drop off and make sure I still
Okay.
have my job over here. But
Okay.
no, I'm good. I'm good to keep going, guys. For sure.
Okay.
Okay.
You are. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
That's good.
I did have a question about, and I see a guitar behind you, and I
Oh yeah.
read in your bio that you compose music. Oh wow! So I was curious because I haven't heard you say anything about that on your channel, or I haven't gotten to that point in your book if you do talk about it. But what type of music do you like to compose? Because we're musicians as well.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Now we're getting to the stuff I really love. So no, this is great. So yes, I kind of have lots of hobbies, just almost unlimited. I'm interested in everything, but music's always been very special to me. And I'm an old band nerd, all that stuff. So I've always been involved with music as a kid on up to some degree. And by the way, when I was in the FBI, my hobbies are real important to me. I mean, I love my hobbies, and music is one of those. And FBI gets in the way of hobbies. So just another selfish thing, but I think it's good to be well-rounded and do these things. So I want to hear more about your music interest as well. But yeah, so for me, I am kind of a hobbyist musician. I currently produce music under the artist name Austin Apolog. And it's hobbyist stuff, it's nothing, it's nothing like my FBI. I wish my music stuff would kind of take off like the FBI stuff did, but it doesn't. But that's okay. Music business tough, but I do it for me and a few other folks.
I think it's because the music industry is more saturated than the ex-FBI agents around.
This is true. I've got the market cornered on FBI agents who are also like to blab and go on and on. So yes, not a big supply of those. But so I do more, generally I do more kind of electronic music, but kind of a wide variety of styles. Funny enough, my probably most streamed or popular song, which none of my stuff, no one even listens to at all in the United States, but I do occasionally get some Shazams and notifications of streams in other countries. So I did an all kind of orchestra arrangement. I had a very electronic song, and I did an all orchestra arrangement, nothing electronic music, just some kind of classical music style. And that turned out to be by far, the most listened to song that I've had and downloaded. So anyway, but I will throw out that a couple of things. The one thing I want to tout on this podcast or plug is anybody, please listening, and you guys as well, if you just Google Austin Pug Rescue. When I say pug, I'm talking about the Chinese pugs. That's another hobby of mine. My wife and I help out the pug rescue, and we're the people that dress up our pugs in costumes and enter them in contests. So we are those people. But if you Google Austin Pug Rescue or Google Merry Puggin' Christmas. So, Merry Puggin' Christmas. And we put out a song, and it's called Merry Puggin' Christmas. It's a holiday song. We just released it. 100% of all proceeds, and it's on iTunes and all that stuff, but 100%, every penny goes to Austin Pug Rescue. Is just for fun. But that's the one thing I want to tout. It kind of sort of evokes the old, Alvin and the Chipmunks and some of the old cheesy, kind of Christmas songs. But
I love that Alvin and the Chipmunks. What was it? Christmas Time Is Here. All-time favorite Christmas song.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you actually might like. So yes, so I'm sorry. Google Merry Puggin' Christmas, everybody. If you play it, even the YouTube plays help, stream a little bit. And then if you do love it and want to add it to your holiday routine, just a nice 99-cent purchase. Of course, Apple keeps their share, but the vast majority of it, every penny that Apple doesn't keep, we're given to Pug Rescue, and just kind of a fun thing there. So
awesome.
Anyway. I'll link all of that, all of your information on the description of this podcast for anyone that is listening that is interested.
Oh, fantastic.
I myself will also listen.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. One other thing I'll throw out too is you just never know what life has in store for you. So another kind of hobby that's been a music extension of mine, I've become sort of the musician. I wrote some music for the intro of a podcast, and I had a song out that kind of got some attention from podcasts. So the Austin FC, it's a new Major League Soccer team that's ramping up in Austin. They start play here in 2021 pretty soon. So I've kind of been adopted and brought into the fold for kind of the main podcast for that. And I even get to meet with the main organization. And some of my music stuff may actually wind up on the video boards and being played during matches. And so that's real exciting for me, especially just as a hobbyist musician with 19 YouTube followers or whatever it is, so we're talking really small potatoes right here, but you never know in life. And at the end of the day, if you're doing something that you enjoy, and for me, if I have two people, one person that says, I really like that song, thank you, and I see that on YouTube or whatever, I'm like, yep, that's great. I'm glad at least somebody experienced what I was trying to convey musically, and I can get lost. I can get on this keyboard and produce music, and that's the one thing that I can look at the clock and it'll suddenly be it'll be 8 p.m. and then suddenly it's 2 a.m. I'm like, oh, how'd that happen? I'm sure you guys probably would echo similar sentiments. Tell me more about you.
Not as often, not as regularly anymore for me. I used to be in a band myself, but Ashok currently does a lot of similar to the orchestration that you mentioned.
Yeah, I do. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a niche genre, but it's mostly electronic. It's supposed to be much more atmospheric. It started out as a very niche genre called dungeon synth. Out of all things, it's supposed to be very atmospheric, kind of like me and Murat both come from, I suppose, a metal background.
Yes.
So it's the electronic, I suppose, evolution of that. But yeah, it's under the name Vacarch, VACARCH. Sure, if you want to write it down.
I'm writing it down.
Also,
yeah.
Also, the listeners of the podcast, if there are any, which I'm not sure, and we started this podcast out because one day we were at work because we work together, and I was like, it would be really great to do a radio show where you just play Gregorian chants because they're really, I think it's beautiful music and we're both into it. So that's how Our Thoughts Tonight started randomly.
Yeah.
Oh, nuts. No, I love it. And just the pacing and just kind of starting off, I love just the podcast, just the chants at first. It just puts you kind of in a more thoughtful mood. It's not this, you turn on CNN or whatever. It's just boom, 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 boom. Hey, let's slow down. Let's talk about some thought-provoking things and listen to some music. And I love it. It's great. Yeah.
The whole thing with the podcast it was almost an outlet of our regular nights at work, basically. It was basically just, okay, let's just experience that for everybody else. Gregorian chants is definitely a big part of that, though.
Oh, that's fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah.
So have you been on any other podcasts, or have you met any people through YouTube or your book that like us have reached out to you to join on a podcast, hypothetically, or a situation like this for an interview?
Sure. No. I was honored. This was the first podcast that I've been invited to actually participate as a guest. Help a little production.
Oh wow. Well, you're our first guest.
It works out. Beautiful.
Yeah. First.
I love it. Yeah, no, it's definitely fun for me, and and a big honor. I appreciate it. I know you guys are trying to grow your base and everything, of course, and I'm honored, very honored to be the first guest. So very cool. Piece of history right there. I love it.
God,
I do occasionally get a little a question from a book, people writing a book, for some help, or like, would this really happen, or what have you. So anybody that's interested in, Vincent.sellers.com, contact information there, or through YouTube, I just love helping people out, and it's one of those things that I like to share the information just because nobody else seems to want to, and so far the FBI hasn't tried to muzzle me. I did have to go through all their publication stuff for the book, and again, typical process, which I just thought was hilarious, is they made me change everybody's names except for my own. I'm like, okay, if you think that really helps security somehow. But if and you're into it, I really didn't have any massive state secrets or anything that I could share. So, but it's somebody's job. Again, giant bureaucracy. It's somebody's job to apparently review the books that FBI agents read. Right, and then make suggest changes to make sure that it stays confidential.
That is really amazing.
Yeah,
I would have never even thought that was somebody's job.
It is. Yeah, who knew, right? I mean, that's how big the FBI is, and there's probably someone's job to audit them and make sure they're doing their job correctly. So
very bureaucratic.
Yes.
Earlier at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned you actually checked a few of our episodes. I'm curious as to which ones you skimmed through, or which ones you listen to a little bit. Do you
Well,
remember?
sure. So the election coverage is really
Yeah.
spectacular. I love
Oh
that.
my gosh, I don't even remember that one, honestly.
Yeah.
It's fun, and I'm nodding my head. I really agree with almost everything you guys say, and I just I wish everybody could just have a nice dialogue and think through things. So that in particular, and then the last one with the five kind of traits or what have you call the compassion, pride, community, all those those are also very again, kind of thought provoking, and I just love I love the thought process. But the election ones are anything related to that or just fun because
Yeah.
I don't know.
We were getting heated.
Yeah, no,
Politics is general.
it's a good time. No, it's a good time for sure, and it's a very interesting moment in history for the country, and being so so divided. It's almost unreal to me, and people just can't have a dialogue. And it's interesting to me personally, even going back just to say the 2012 election. I mean, we had Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, and to me, where we are now versus just 8 years ago, the lack of respect and craziness coming out of one side in particular, just off the charts. And I know we're digressing a little bit here, but so that's why I appreciate the conversation and the thoughts that you guys have. And wow, what an election indeed, right?
Yeah.
And still not over, I guess, in some people's brains. And that is where this does kind of tie back in, though, to the FBI and the importance of law enforcement and the Attorney General. That role is very important. It's concerning to me. I've never. I mean, I'm I'm approaching 50 now. I'm an old man, and so I've never seen anything like this, and it never occurred to me. And I'm sure you could go back to the origins of World War II. And I'm gotta be careful about what I say here, but it's amazing some of the steps and some of the things, quite frankly, that have come out of this presidential administration, trying to desperately hold on to power and ignoring our country's basic constitutional election, process. Like, I can't believe it. I mean, it's if there's ever been a moment in my lifetime where I feel like, God, are we heading towards some kind of civil war? I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. One of those like, oh, this is going to happen. I'm not, but it's like if things continued the way they're going, I'm like, wow, are we really doing this? Where we're going to ignore votes and just have ridiculous court challenges? And sad to say, my own attorney general from the state of Texas, Ken Paxton, is filing ridiculous federal lawsuits challenging results in other states. Like, just mind your own business.
Yeah.
But and he's in a host of trouble. Believe he's a total. Sorry, I will say this. I hope you don't mind. It's a total shit show. May cut that word, or dumpster fire. To
No,
put it
totally
nicely.
great.
But God, what a crazy man. And it fascinates me to no end. And not trying to pick political sides, and I think that it's fair to have all perspectives. Just kind of caveat that. And I don't consider myself a dyed-in-the-wool, either party, but there was no question what the right way to vote was in this last election. I mean, come on. But I will say it's just interesting to me that on the Republican side, that the Republicans are standing for this to allow their party leader and other leaders in these states to fight a ridiculous fight trying to overthrow a legitimate election. How on earth do the Republicans think they will ever attract another voter that thinks in a sane manner? I mean, if I was a Republican politician, which I'm certainly not, I would be outraged and trying to distance myself just so quickly. Like, dude, I don't know what's going on with these other nut jobs. I'm all about, if you win the election, you win the election. I mean, come on, people. So anyway, I'm digressing quite a bit here, but that's where I think your election is fascinating. And anyway, you probably don't strongly disagree with me, I would suspect. But
I mean, I remember months before the election, I was just terrified of what just happened. I'm kind of like you, this whole Civil War notion, where I'm not a conspiracy theorist either, but it's like the whole idea of Trump refusing, the election results was just terrifying. Luckily, it seems to be somewhat water under the bridge. And I just want to ask you this: if for the future of Trump personally, there's talks of him trying to come back in 2024. There's also talks of like, is he going to be locked up once he gets out of office? Like, what's your predictions for that? Like, because that's